From Washington to Los Angeles and Portland, demonstrators have been taking to the streets to protest against the incumbent president of the United States, Donald Trump. Protesters marched outside the White House throughout the election battle. They have been raising their concerns over a number of issues, with emotions flaring and dozens of arrests already reported. While the counting of votes was underway, video footage showed protesters marching and singing. They marched down 17th Street in D.C. towards the Black Lives Matter Plaza near the White House. Take a listen in to this reaction coming in.
We're hoping for a Joe Biden win. Originally, we didn't really support Joe Biden, we wanted an alternative, but this is the only option we have. At the end of the day, it's about getting fascism out of the office, getting someone who suppresses the right to vote, someone who suppresses the rights of minorities as a whole, someone who doesn't care about the economic equality of the people. That's the goal that we're out here today. So even though we might not support Joe Biden to the fullest extent, we think it's far better for the United States to have someone like him in office.
In Seattle as well, protesters carried Black Lives Matter banners. This is just a glimpse of the unrest that was witnessed on the streets of Seattle, with slogans being shouted out, some of them even dressed in all black apparel. They held mostly peaceful marches around the downtown area of the nation's capital. The Black Lives Matter protest movement, which has been gaining momentum over the last few weeks, intensifying on election day, even as ballots were being counted. This is a look at what the streets of the United States have looked like. People have been voicing their concerns on a number of issues, civil unrest being a primary factor which has been dominating headlines in the United States, racial tensions, Black Lives Matter protesters, the movement, of course, that was triggered by the killing of George Floyd, intensifying over the last few weeks. A series of protests that have been organized, but they have continued all the way to the election day as well. And joining us live on the broadcast is India's former permanent representative to the United Nations, Saeed Akbaruddin. Thanks very much, sir, for speaking with us. We've been playing out those visuals of the protests, the civil unrest, the threat of violence, which is now becoming reality, unfortunately. Your reaction to what we are seeing playing out on the streets of America?
So what we've seen since yesterday is that the election has basically not answered the question of who would be the next president of the United States. And what it has done is, despite the huge number of popular participation, some say that it could well be upwards of 2/3 of the entire electorate. Despite this, the divisions that were in American society remain. In fact, they are reflected in the outcome of the voting. So the same splits that were visible during the electoral campaign were reflected in the voting and are being reflected now, as we still await the outcome of the 5 or 6 states which are still in play. Now, it reveals how divided a society that the United States is, because fundamentally, the contours of the division remain unaltered, except in one case, that is in Arizona. What was the division in 2016 has remained. In fact, the red states have become deeper red. The blue states perhaps are of a deeper tinge of blue. What does this actually mean for United States and for all of us? And that's what we need to look at, because rather than look at sporadic and spontaneous events, we need to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that, it does not augur well on many counts. For example, there is talk that the judiciary may be involved in deciding an outcome of an election. this is never a happy situation to be in. B, there are some who say that if President Trump wins, then for the second consecutive election, there would be a decision of a president not being elected by a popular vote, by a majority popular vote, but by a majority of the Electoral College. On the other hand, if Vice President Biden wins, then we don't know what would be the complexion of the Senate.
Yes.
So all this doesn't augur very well for policy making, for bridging divides, or for working forward. So it's a disconcerting situation that we find ourselves in. Globally, everybody is watching this. In the United States, everybody is anxious and concerned that a popular will has been expressed, but outcomes still remain uncertain.
Yes, but what's your assessment of just how prepared the Republicans even are for this legal battle, which they have indicated will be a stand that they take? Given what's happened in Texas, for example, the court ruling was certainly not going in their favor, and that's something which should give us an indication of just how underprepared they might be. Going to the courts for this fight, which unfortunately is now becoming a legal tussle the way we're looking at it, that too without evidence. So
resolving political disputes by legal mechanisms is never a good solution. But that said, there are very limited options available. And right now in the United States, since the electoral process began, there have been upwards of 300 small cases, larger cases on issues related to the electoral process. That's the nature of the beast. Whether some people are prepared or not, that's the only pathway available if you don't get a political solution. And given the sharp divergences, political solutions are going to be difficult to accept by either side. Perhaps a legal solution, which is not an optimum solution, which is certainly suboptimal, perhaps is the only resort, given the sharp differences which are not going to enable a politically satisfactory outcome for either side.
Yes, but at the same time, President Donald Trump wanting to take this battle to the courts raises question marks over the entire democratic process and also is an insult to the decision that's being handed out to the voters.
The issue is that the Supreme Judiciary in the United States is has a tradition of fierce independence. Yes, the judges are appointed on a political basis, but many of their decisions are of an independent nature. In a certain circumstances, where political outcomes are not possible, what other outcomes can you look at? Do we want a framework of rule of law to prevail? Or, as you pointed out, disturbances and anomic incidents all that may break out? The choice is not a happy one to be in. Let us hope that the outcomes of the elections will be conclusive. Perhaps that will obviate the need for a resort to a judicial outcome, which is not at this stage a certainty, but it is a trend towards that outcome, which all of us need to understand and prepare for. But perhaps outcomes of the 4 to 5 states, or actually 6 states, which are still to be announced, may provide another pathway. So let's wait and see on how this progresses, rather than jump the gun and express views which need to be in a systematic way articulated one step at a time.
Absolutely, and many have said that the statement given out by President Trump maybe went a step too far. Well, it's not over till it's completely over. Thanks very much on that note, Saeed Akbaruddin, for those perspectives.